Schools here with your April 9th summary of our board meeting tonight. We actually had two meetings. We had the budget committee, the introductory budget committee meeting earlier today at 4 o'clock. And then our board meeting started at 5:30. And so I'd like to start by just going through a little bit of the budget process that we had at 4 o'clock. The very first thing that happened was the meeting was opened by Natasha McFarland, who was last year's chair. And immediately we assigned officers, and they voted on officers. Kara Marsh Rhodes is now our chair for the 24-25 budget year, and Natasha McFarland is the vice chair going into this year. And then we presented to Budget Committee and to the board and the Budget Committee, that is all the Budget Committee. We presented to them the conditions and the discussion for how this budget season is going to open up. Generally, what we're talking about is what would it look like for our budget to absorb about a 3% reduction in costs overall and making our budget a balance based upon those cuts. That includes about 60 positions that we'd be reducing through attrition, retirements, and resignations across the system and trying to meet those expectations going into the 24-25 year. We talked about that from the lens of two really big important things. The fact that number one, ESSER dollars are coming to an end, and number two, we are carrying over as much as we possibly can in fund balance beyond the 5% amount we're expected by policy to hold and carry in our budget process. We're going to be using excess fund balance to help soften the blow next year in the budget. The second thing that is important to note is we're building the budget and doing the budget process with the Budget Committee outside of any conversations of the local levy so that we have a budget, whether or not the levy passes or not on May 21st. And so that process is underway tonight. Our next meeting will be May 9th, and we'll continue that dialogue. And it was a great meeting, great conversation during that first budget meeting. The regular meeting started at 5:30. The very first thing that is of significance was the meeting was called by Vice Chair Marcus LeGrand, and that's because, as you may or may not have heard, former Chair Melissa Barnes-Delakia has resigned her board position. She's actually resigned as board chair and her seat on the board. In an effort on her part, she's going to be applying for a job that we have open with in the district, and she is attempting to do that and put a little bit of distance from her authority and position as a board member into applying for that job. And so Marcus LeGrand was voted as our board chair moving forward, and Carrie McPherson Douglas is now voted as our board vice chair. Tonight's Champion for Students Award went to Chloe Grisson for her efforts at Caldera High School. She's a sophomore at Caldera. She put on the very first Life and Career Readiness Night, which about 400 students and families attended back in early March, and it was a fantastic event. I was there to see all the different vendors and all the different employers in the community coming to show and share their experiences, what it's like for students that might be considering their professions. It was a fantastic experience. Then we had the second item we had for recognitions was a resolution to honor and recognize Teacher Appreciation Week, which is from May 6th to May 10th, and that was read by Director Tatum and adopted by our board tonight. And then our Student Advisory Council report was given today by Wes McGovern, a senior from Senior High School, and Quincy Bernal, a junior at Bend High School, both of them speaking to the value and efforts of membership of our Student Voice Council and prompting us to challenge our students across our 7 high schools to get more students involved in that process as we start to look for new membership going into next year. We had 2 public comments, one from Steve Epstein, who was promoting the idea of K-12 kind of coding curriculum and making sure that we're providing kids access to STEM education across all of our grade levels. And then our second public commenter was from Oliver Tatum, who gave a comment about a desire to improve TAG and gifted education across the district. Consent agenda passed without conversation. Consent for information, there were 4 things included in consent for information was public comment follow-up from last month. Our sustainability update for the district was in there. Report on executive limitation 4.4, which is facilities. And then the last part was the third quarter finance report. And we had 2 big reports tonight. The first report was a curriculum adoption for both our ELD, English Language Development students and the curriculum to support them. And the second one was the K-5 dual language program, in which we have determined that we have a curricular resource created by Benchmark, which we're going to go out for public review for the next 30 days and see how that comes back in May. But the presentation on the English language development, they went looking for curriculum to similarly in the way that we had for the dual language program at K-5, but couldn't find anything that met our needs as a district. And so we at the beginning of this school year went through some training and looked at developing and designing our own, and using kind of Jay McTighe's understanding by design model of where do we want kids to know and understand, building our collective units. And so building units K-5, 6, 8, and through high school, that group is building each of their units. And so they gave us presentations on what that activity was like. Very fascinating. Our second report was a very in-depth look into our TAG programming, some of the things that we're doing really well, and areas where we've got opportunities to improve, and a lot of deep discussion on how best to maneuver that through the next several years as we look to expand and develop our TAG identification program, making sure it's known and understood by our parents and families, where access is going to be granted, and what we need to do to make sure that parents know that. And that was the end of our reports. My superintendent's report, just two things, reminding folks that we're in the process of doing some strategic planning right now. And then secondly, reminding folks that there are levy informational presentations going on all over the community, in our schools, and in groups across the district, district-wide. And so just inviting folks to participate in those and reminding them that the board members can advocate, district staff cannot advocate, but can provide information to the community. And that was it. We had a few comments from board members, and we adjourned at about 8:25. And that's it for our report. Look for our next meeting. Our next meeting is May 14th, 2024 at 5:30, and we'll have a budget meeting ahead of that, I think at 4 o'clock that day as well. Look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.